My life with Austin was a carefully curated, architectural marvel. He was a high-end real estate developer, specializing in luxury, high-rise residential towers, structures of undeniable power and precision. I was Clayman, his rock, his strategist, his unofficial chief of staff. I handled the logistics of his massive, demanding social life, while quietly nurturing my own passion, the complex, precise, and deeply satisfying art of culinary architecture. I worked as a food critic and writer, a role Austin tolerated as long as it kept me out of the kitchen of our brownstone. He preferred me impeccably dressed, performing the role of the elegant, supportive fiancé at his numerous galas and investor dinners. In his eyes, my value was in presentation and stability. For 7 years, I was the perfect foundation for his skyscraper life. I dismissed the small cracks that began to appear. His sudden late nights at the construction sites that were geographically improbable, the way he flinched if I reached for his phone, and the cold, professional kiss he started giving me. A mere closing transaction, not an expression of intimacy. The real estate world, Austin often lectured, was about due diligence and structural integrity. He preached transparency, but our relationship had become a shadow entity, built on shifting sand. The night I found out was, fittingly, a night of meticulous planning. We were hosting a major investor from Dubai. Austin needed everything flawless, and I, naturally, had curated the menu, the wine pairings, and the guest list with military precision. I had spent the afternoon prepping the canapés, my hands covered in the faint, comforting scent of basil and lemon zest. Austin came home late, smelling faintly of expensive cologne that wasn't his usual scent and a distant, almost metallic hint of cheap perfume. He rushed to shower, claiming, "Concrete dust, Clayman. It clings." Later, as he changed into his tuxedo, he asked me to get his phone from the pocket of his discarded trousers. I hesitated. It was an unspoken rule. Austin's phone was a highly guarded, classified asset. But the timer for the oven was about to go off, and he was already halfway through tying his complicated black tie. I reached into the pocket. Instead of the phone, my fingers brushed against a small, wadded-up square of paper. It wasn't a business card or a receipt. It was a cocktail napkin. It was covered in hurried, sprawling handwriting. "Amelia, the blue door is too public. Meet me at the Sentinel, room 1403, 9 p.m. Don't be late. Amelia." The Sentinel, room 1403. The world didn't stop spinning. It slowed down, crystallizing around those 5 words. My mind, trained in the fast, analytical pace of a critic, immediately ran a cross-reference. The Sentinel was Austin's newest, most exclusive luxury tower, still under construction. And Amelia was a young, aggressively ambitious landscape architect who had been lobbying hard to get the contract for the penthouse gardens. She was all sharp edges and calculated, synthetic charm. I stood there, the cocktail napkin turning to ash in my hand, listening to Austin finish his knotting, the sound perfectly calibrated and arrogant. "Got the phone, Clayman?" he called, impatient. "Yes, Austin," I replied, my voice perfectly level, a professional sound that betrayed nothing. I had to maintain the illusion of the perfect foundation. The system must not crash yet. I realized my 7 years had been built not on love, but on a massive deception. My task was no longer to support his structure, but to deconstruct it with the same exacting precision he demanded of a demolition team. The investor dinner proceeded flawlessly. I moved through the evening with the chilling, detached efficiency of a machine. I discussed interest rates, complimented the investor's wife, and ensured the beef tenderloin was served at the exact perfect medium rare. I was operating at peak performance while my interior structure was collapsing. That night, I didn't confront him. Confrontation was a messy, public transaction that rarely yielded maximum profit. I needed data. I needed documentation. I needed to perform my own ruthless due diligence. My job as a food critic had taught me the necessity of research. I knew how to dig into public records, how to trace ownership, and how to find the hidden vulnerabilities in a seemingly flawless facade. I started with the Sentinel. It took me 3 days to confirm that room 1403 was a private, unlisted staging suite, used only for Austen's personal meetings and high-level, off-the-books transactions. A private, untraceable sanctuary. The perfect clandestine venue. Next, Amelia. It was almost too easy. She had the aggressive, social media-driven life of a woman desperate for validation. She posted constantly, but always masked her locations. I used geotagging data from her casual lunch photos to establish patterns, cross-referencing them with Austen's meticulously logged calendar I had managed for years. The pattern was undeniable. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 8:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. His calendar showed site visits. Her feed showed late-night sketching. I didn't need any more emotional confirmation. The evidence was mathematical. 2 recurring events, 2 conflicting narratives, and a secret meeting location. The financial model of our relationship was fraudulent. My revenge began not with rage, but with a strategic asset reallocation. First, I sold the massive diamond engagement ring. It was a tangible asset and I needed capital. The jeweler who appraised it noted its flawless cut. I simply said, "The stone is perfect, but the setting is unstable." The money funded my first step, leasing a derelict but architecturally significant space in the West Village, the perfect location for a flagship restaurant. A space Austen had actually tried to acquire and develop into luxury condos, but the zoning was too complex. I got it because I was willing to commit to restoration, not demolition. Second, I secured the perfect mentor. Chef Laurent Dubois, a temperamental titan of the culinary world, had always been a fan of my food writing, appreciating my deep understanding of flavor profiles and technical execution. I pitched him my concept, a restaurant that was less about fusion and more about deconstruction and refinement, taking classic, honest ingredients and elevating them through meticulous technique. He saw the fire in my eyes and agreed to be my silent partner and guide. Austen was oblivious. He noticed the engagement ring was gone, but I had a ready answer. I had it refitted. I thought the current setting lacked structural integrity. I lied easily, mirroring his own professional jargon. He simply nodded, approving the use of his language. My absence from his social calendar was explained as intense focus on a new, high-profile project. He assumed it was a book. He was incapable of fathoming my ambition or the scale of my undertaking. The physical transformation of the restaurant space, which I named the core, mirrored my own internal process. I was stripping away the past, rebuilding my life with clean lines and undeniable quality. My plan was multi-layered, a series of cascading vulnerabilities designed to expose Austen's core flaw. His reliance on image and his utter lack of depth. Phase 1. The financial exposure. Austen's reputation as a developer rested on 2 key things: his impeccable taste and his financial stability. I knew from my time managing his accounts that he was over-leveraged on the Sentinel project, betting everything on its success. He needed every major contract to go through flawlessly. Phase 2. The public humiliation via Amelia. Amelia was his secret, but she was also his public liability. She was desperate for the validation of the Sentinel contract. My revenge would involve exposing their affair not through cheap gossip, but through a professional, undeniable association with my success, an association that would compromise Austen's ability to secure his most crucial contract. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when I met Raffle. Raffle was a general contractor specializing in high-end, bespoke restaurant design. Laurent had introduced us. Where Austen was all sharp suits and rehearsed confidence, Raffle was solid, grounded, and possessed a quiet competence. He wore denim and work boots, and his hands, scarred from years of building, were the antithesis of Austen's soft, ringed hands. He didn't see me as Austen's fiancé or a food critic. He saw me as a visionary client with a deep understanding of logistics and process. "You've designed this kitchen layout like a high-performance engine, Clayman," he observed during our first site visit, tracing the flow from the prep station to the pass. "It has beautiful operational efficiency." He used words like efficiency, integrity, and process, but applied them to my work, my vision. He validated my structural genius. Our relationship was professional, but there was an easy, safe connection. A recognition of two professionals who valued the unseen infrastructure as much as the visible facade. He was helping me build my sanctuary, brick by brick. As the grand opening of the core approached, I meticulously executed Phase 2. I had secured a major feature in the city's most prestigious architecture magazine, not for my food, that was reserved for the critics, but for the design and restoration of the historically significant West Village building. Austin, being a developer, was obsessed with this magazine. I submitted the article, complete with high-resolution photos of the finished space, and a carefully worded acknowledgement that read, "The visionary restoration of the core was guided by the principle of respecting original, structural integrity, a commitment mirrored by the gifted landscape architect, Amelia Voss, who designed the unique, minimalist kitchen garden. Her work on the space's hidden geometry was invaluable." Amelia, desperate for any high-profile press, shared the article immediately on all her social platforms, tagging Austin's firm, thrilled to be publicly associated with a high-end restoration. She took the bait, not realizing she was now publicly, professionally linked to Austin's ex-fiancé. Austin, seeing the article and Amelia's jubilant sharing, had his first moment of true, gut-wrenching panic. The public association with me, the ex-fiancé, and his mistress was catastrophic. It made his affair undeniable and visible to the very people who valued his reputation most. His institutional investors, who valued stability above all else. His structural integrity was now in question. My premeditated demolition was set to begin. The grand opening night of the core was a masterclass in controlled elegance. Every detail, from the weight of the silver to the lighting that made the dishes sing, was my design. The room was packed with the city's financial, social, and culinary elite. Clayman, the former background noise, was now the main event. I stood at the pass, impeccably dressed in my white chef's jacket, my face a mask of focus and professional calm. I was running a kitchen with the efficiency of a high-frequency trading floor, giving sharp, decisive commands. The final element of my revenge plan was executed that night, a public performance that would be undeniable. Austin, ever the self-important narcissist, had wrangled an invitation. He arrived late, sweeping in with the kind of calculated entrance that used to impress me. He was alone. Amelia wasn't present. He was here to conduct damage control, to assure his investors he was fine, and to try and claim a perverse kind of credit for my success. I watched him from the pass. He started making his rounds, a forced smile plastered on his face. Then the second course was served. The deconstructed integrity. It was a complex dish that was the signature of the core. A delicate, honest piece of perfectly seared scallop, served on a transparent, geometrically flawless bed of clarified consommé, flanked by 3 intricate garnishes. A crunchy, bitter black sesame tuile, representing the hidden bitterness, a perfect sphere of fermented chili paste, the suppressed heat, and a single flawless sweet pickled radish, the final, sharp truth. The dish was served with a small printed card detailing the concept. Deconstructed integrity, a study in how even the most beautiful exterior, the scallop, relies on the purity and honesty of its foundations, the consommé, to achieve true value. Any corruption in the structural ingredients leads to catastrophic flavor failure. It was a dish that was beautiful, precise, and utterly ruthless. Every high-ranking investor at the table, those who knew Austin's reputation, instantly understood the subtle, searing metaphor. Clayman, the ex-fiancée, was not just cooking. She was performing a live financial and moral audit of Austin Thorne. Austin saw the card. He saw the investors' polite, knowing smiles. He saw his perfect facade crumbling, not due to messy confrontation, but due to undeniable, public, intellectual art. He finally approached the pass, his face a mixture of fear and forced outrage. "Clayman, what in God's name are you doing? This is aggressive. This is unprofessional. It's malicious," he hissed, low enough that only I could hear. You are making me look unstable to the people who matter most. I didn't turn around. I didn't break my focus from the dishes I was garnishing. I'm doing my job, Austin, I replied, my voice hard and surgical. I am creating a product of unimpeachable integrity. I am a professional. Unlike you, I don't deal in fraudulent concepts or hidden liabilities. This dish and this restaurant are built on clean ingredients, clean code and transparency. Your life, Austin, was built on misrepresentation. The market, my market, is simply correcting the value. I finally turned and looked at him. I wasn't angry. I was detached. You called me background noise. Look around, Austin. I am the center of gravity in this city now. You are the distraction. You are the unstable element that has been purged from the system. He stood there, defeated by the very precision and structure he admired but could never possess. He walked out, his exit swallowed by the room's ambient hum, a ghost in his own failed narrative. The exposure was instant and devastating. The architecture magazine was circulated heavily. The innuendo of the deconstructed integrity dish became the city's favorite gossip. His investors, already jittery from his over-leveraging, saw the public drama as unacceptable volatility. Within 2 weeks, Austin's firm lost the cornerstone contract for the Sentinel, citing concerns regarding the managing partner's recent conduct and ability to maintain stakeholder confidence. It was a death blow. His carefully constructed life began to crumble, brick by expensive brick. Amelia, meanwhile, went from being his secret professional asset to his public liability. She was now linked to his failure, his toxic behavior, and the ensuing scandal. She quickly went from sharing pictures of her collaboration with Austin to scrubbing her social media entirely, desperately trying to salvage her own fragile career. My professional life, by contrast, exploded. The core was an immediate, unmitigated success. Critics loved the food, but they were captivated by my story, the woman who traded a toxic lawyer for culinary sovereignty. I was no longer a critic. I was a creator, a chef, and a businesswoman who understood that success, like flavor, required truth. One rain-swept afternoon, Amelia showed up at the restaurant's back door. She was distraught, desperate, and utterly undone. "Clayman, you have to stop this," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "Austin is blaming me for everything. My career is ruined. You can't let your personal vendetta destroy us." I looked at the woman who had happily participated in the deception that nearly destroyed me. "Us, Amelia?" I asked, leaning against the cold steel of the service door. "There is no us. There is only a failed partnership and the resulting market correction. You chose to align your professional and personal capital with a structurally unsound entity. You were betting on a lie. You were seduced by the facade, just as I was. But you're succeeding," she cried. "You're rich, famous. He's ruined. What more do you want?" "I don't want anything from Austin, Amelia," I said, looking out at the rain. The revenge wasn't the goal. It was the purification of the system. I needed to demonstrate that I was not the background noise, but the essential value. Your presence here proves the success of my execution. You both gambled on deception, and now you're paying the price of instability. That is not my action. That is the natural consequence of your fraudulent design. I closed the door gently, the sound of the latch a final, definitive period on that destructive chapter of my life. With Austin fully liquidated from my emotional and financial balance sheet, my focus shifted entirely to growth and sustainability. The core flourished, and I began planning the launch of my second concept, a fine dining establishment named The Resilience. Raffle, having expertly delivered the core's infrastructure, was now my go-to consultant. Our professional relationship had deepened into an easy, comfortable friendship that was the very definition of emotional stability. He was the opposite of Austin's exhausting performance. Raffle was honest about his limitations, celebrated his crew, and insisted on solving problems with transparency. He saw the complexity of my life, the long hours, the high pressure, and rather than minimizing it, he simply built systems to support it. He'd show up unannounced, not demanding attention, but with a blueprint for a new refrigeration system, or simply a thermos of excellent coffee on a stressful morning. One night, after a particularly grueling service, I found him on a stool by the bar, sketching something on a large pad of graph paper. "What are you designing now, Raffle?" I asked, pulling off my toque. "A preventative maintenance schedule for your walk-in freezer," he said, his eyes still focused on the lines. "If that unit fails on a Saturday night, it's catastrophic. A small, disciplined investment in maintenance now prevents a massive, unavoidable crisis later. It's just sound risk management." I laughed, a real, unburdened sound. "You talk like an analyst." "I talk like a builder, Clayman," he replied, finally looking up. His eyes were warm, honest, and utterly free of judgment. "And I recognize structural value when I see it. You are the most structurally sound person I have ever met. You value integrity, process, and truth. That's why your food works, and that's why you work." He was validating the real me, the strategist, the builder, the meticulous planner. He saw my precision not as a quirk, but as my greatest strength. The transition from professional respect to genuine affection was gradual, built not on explosive passion, but on the quiet confidence of shared values. It was like the slow, deliberate rise of a sourdough starter, organic, patient, and full of living integrity. One evening, after we had successfully navigated a difficult high-pressure vendor issue together, we celebrated with a simple bottle of wine on a scaffolding platform overlooking the construction site of the Resilience. "You know, Raffle," I confessed, looking at the city lights. "For years, I believed that love had to be this complicated, stressful, high-stakes thing. Like a high-rise tower, impressive but always swaying in the wind." He smiled, a gentle, genuine curve of his lips. "I only build on bedrock, Clayman. And I only trust a design that includes a massive margin for error. Love, to me, should be a redundancy system, a second layer of defense that makes the entire structure safer, not weaker." He didn't make a grand gesture. He just took my hand, his grip solid and comforting. "I see your blueprint, Clayman, and I want to build the rest of your life on it. Clean lines. Honest materials. No deception. Just us, the builders." In Raffle, I had found not just a partner, but a fellow architect of integrity. He was the safe harbor, the fault-tolerant system that ensured my personal operation would run flawlessly forever. 2 years after the grand opening of the core, and 1 year into my partnership with Raffle, I was recognized by a major food magazine as the restaurateur of the decade. It was the final, professional confirmation that Austin's opinion was irrelevant. I had superseded him in every professional and personal metric. Austin, meanwhile, had faded into the obscurity he deserved. He was working for a smaller regional firm, specializing in strip malls, a far cry from the luxury high-rises he had craved. He had lost his arrogance, replaced by a hollow-eyed resentment that was occasionally glimpsed in the corners of tabloids. He and Amelia had broken up, their toxic foundation unable to withstand the structural pressure of public failure. Raffle and I were inseparable. We didn't live a glamorous life of public display. We lived a life of mutual creation. We bought a gorgeous, broken-down old stone farmhouse upstate, a place that needed deep structural work and patient restoration. It was our joint project, our metaphor. We spent weekends working side by side. He handling the framing and the electric, I handling the bespoke cabinetry and the kitchen design. Raffle never asked me to cook for him. He celebrated my mastery. He never asked me to organize his life. He showed up with solutions. He was the quiet, powerful force that allowed my own immense energy to focus on creation, not defense. One Sunday, while sanding a massive, beautiful old wooden beam, Raffle stopped, wiping the dust from his forehead. "You know, Clayman, I was thinking about Austin the other day," he said. His voice thoughtful, not malicious. Paused, surprised. I rarely thought of him anymore. He was a memory leak that had been successfully patched. "And what were your thoughts, architect?" I asked, leaning on my sander. I realized the problem wasn't the cheating or the lies, Raffle said. The problem was that he saw his fiancée not as a whole brilliant person but as a component. A highly decorative, useful component necessary for his overall structure. He didn't love you. He was dependent on your function. His failure was not just financial but a failure of vision. He couldn't see the true complexity and power you possessed. So he had to minimize you to match his own small scale. He put down his tools and walked over to me, taking the sander from my hands. I don't want a component, Clayman. I want the main system. I want the whole, breathtaking, incredibly complex operation. I am honored to be your chief engineer, your general contractor, and your most trusted partner. You are the architect of our entire life. He reached into the pocket of his worn work jeans and pulled out a small, simple wooden box he had carved himself. Inside was not a massive diamond, but a heavy hand-wrought platinum band. Simple, strong, and enduring. "Marry me, Clayman," he said, his eyes holding the depth and honesty of a true, solid foundation. "Let's design a life that is completely, unconditionally fault-tolerant." There was no hesitation, no calculation. It was the easiest, most self-evident decision of my life. "Yes, Raffle," I whispered. "Let's build it." Our wedding was quiet, intimate, and held at the completed farmhouse. The meal was prepared by me and Laurent, a celebration of honest, beautiful ingredients. There were no flashy investors or public displays of wealth. Only the people who valued us for our intrinsic worth. We built a life where my ambition was a shared asset, and his quiet competence was my greatest comfort. I expanded the core into a national brand, focusing on culinary integrity and sustainability. I ran my business not with aggression, but with the structural efficiency Raffle had taught me to value. One day, while reviewing the financial records for the Resilience, I came across an article about Austin. He had been arrested for minor fraud related to a failed zoning petition, a small-scale crime, a desperate attempt to recapture the risk he had once fetishized. He was caught because he made a sloppy error, a basic logistical mistake, the kind of error I used to cover for him daily. His arrogance had finally consumed him. Felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger. He was simply a line item that had finally been zeroed out. My emotional balance sheet was clean. My true fulfillment was in the small, daily acts of creation with Raffle. We were building a kitchen garden together, focusing on heirloom seeds and soil integrity. "Look at the roots on this heirloom tomato, Clayman," Raffle said one sunny afternoon, holding up a fragile plant. "They go deeper than any hybrid. They are structurally resilient because they have history and integrity. Just like us," I smiled, kissing the dust from his cheek. I had learned that true value wasn't the shimmering, precarious height of a luxury skyscraper. It was the unseen integrity of the foundation. It was the honest, complex, and beautiful structure built on clear code and mutual respect. Austin wanted a woman who was background noise for his performance. Raffle wanted a fellow architect for their shared future. Chose the latter. My life was now operating at maximum sustainable yield, forever safe in the knowledge that my partner valued the whole, powerful, beautiful machine that was Clayman Vance. The blueprint was complete, and the structure was, finally, entirely my own.